Jasmine Crockett stepped into the courtroom that morning expecting a routine hearing, the kind of case she had handled 100 times before. The benches were mostly empty, the lighting flat, the mood quiet. Just another day in Chicago's legal machinery, but something was off. Judge Monroe didn't look up when she walked in. He didn't ask for an opening statement. He didn't even explain the charges. Instead, he stared at the docket, then back at Jasmine, and said flatly, $15,000, effective immediately. No evidence, no hearing, no due process. It was more than unusual. It was unconstitutional. The room didn't gasp, but it stiffened. Lawyers exchanged glances, a few scribbled notes. Jasmine stood still, silent, processing not the amount, but the message. This wasn't about a violation, it was about control. About putting her in her place before she even had the chance to speak. She had seen this kind of play before, where authority skips the rules to send a warning. But today, the person they tried to shut down wasn't just another name on the schedule. Today, the woman being silenced held the law in her hands. And unlike most, she knew exactly how to use it. She didn't raise her voice, she didn't argue. Jasmine simply asked, on what grounds? Her tone was steady, professional, not defiant, not emotional, just clear. But that was enough to provoke Judge Monroe. He leaned forward and cut her off. This is not your stage, Miss Crockett. The words echoed with intent. He wasn't just dismissing her legal question, he was denying her presence. It wasn't the first time Jasmine had heard that phrase or something like it. For women like her, especially black women in positions of authority, the phrase carries more than insult. It's a boundary marker, a reminder of who's expected to speak and who's expected to stay silent. But Jasmine didn't flinch. Her years in the courtroom had taught her one thing. When someone tells you to step aside, it often means you're standing exactly where you need to be. Monroe wanted control, not justice. He wanted to make an example. But instead of backing down, Jasmine stood her ground, and in doing so, disrupted the quiet rhythm of a system that counted on her silence. He assumed she would fold. Most do. Not because they're weak, but because the cost of pushing back is often too high. Time, reputation, energy, all drained by systems designed to wear people down. But Jasmine didn't fold. She didn't even blink. Instead, she requested the record reflect that no formal motion had been filed, no hearing had taken place, and no justification had been offered for the fine. It wasn't a speech. It wasn't even a protest. It was a reminder to the court, to the clerk, to anyone listening, that what was happening wasn't just irregular. It was unlawful. Monroe ignored her words, but his silence was starting to weigh. Jasmine didn't need him to agree. She needed the process on the record. That's what she was trained to do. The judge thought the robe was power. Jasmine knew better. Power isn't in the title. It's in knowing the rules and knowing when someone is breaking them. Jasmine didn't raise her voice, but she raised the stakes. With calm precision, she began citing precedent. Sullivan v. Illinois, Henderson v. St. Petersburg, cases where courts had ruled that fines issued without process violated constitutional rights. She wasn't grandstanding. She was laying a foundation. Monroe sat still, trying to mask his discomfort. But every case Jasmine named chipped away at the illusion of his control. Her argument wasn't theoretical. It was practical, grounded in law, and impossible to ignore. The room, once indifferent, began to shift. The court reporter paused her typing to look up. A junior attorney in the back opened his notebook. This wasn't just a procedural objection anymore. It was a live demonstration of what happens when the law is used not to intimidate, but to clarify. Monroe had expected submission. Instead, he got a lesson. And for the first time that morning, it wasn't clear who was in charge of the room. Monroe stared ahead, his fingers tapping the bench. He wasn't responding to the law. He was reacting to the shift in the room. Jasmine hadn't accused him of misconduct. She hadn't raised any alarms. But by methodically laying out precedent and refusing to be rattled, she had changed the atmosphere. His authority, once assumed, now felt conditional. And in that moment, Monroe did what many in power do when they feel exposed. He cloaked his retreat in procedure. "We'll take a 15-minute recess," he announced, standing quickly. No explanation, no eye contact, just a gavel strike and a quiet exit. The courtroom didn't erupt, it settled, because everyone present knew that wasn't just a break, it was an escape, a pause to regain control or call for backup. Jasmine didn't move. She remained at her table, reviewing her notes, steady and still. Not triumphant, not smug, just ready. The recess may have cleared the room, but it confirmed what she already knew. When power doesn't have the law behind it, it hides. The door opened and Monroe re-entered. But this time, he wasn't alone. Walking beside him was Judge Thomas Whitaker, a senior federal judge with decades on the bench and a reputation for quiet authority. His presence didn't need explanation. It spoke for itself. Whatever had started as a routine hearing had now escalated into something bigger. Monroe's posture was different now, stiffer, less certain. He no longer moved like the man in charge. Judge Whitaker took a seat beside him, looked over the case file briefly, then turned toward Jasmine. "Counselor, please restate your position for the record," he said, not dismissively, but with full attention. Jasmine stood, not with aggression, but with clarity. She began to walk him through the sequence of events, not embellishing, not omitting. Just the facts, grounded in law. As she spoke, the power in the room quietly shifted, not with noise or drama, but with the kind of gravity that comes when truth is finally given space to breathe. This was no longer the same courtroom Jasmine had walked into. The dynamics had changed, not through force, but through presence, hers and now Whitaker's. She recounted the original fine, the lack of evidence, the absence of process. She cited case law not to impress but to illuminate. She never raised her voice. She didn't need to. The weight of her argument came from its precision. Monroe, once dominant, remained mostly silent, occasionally shifting in his seat, but offering no meaningful challenge. Whitaker listened without interrupting, asking only for clarification on one precedent, which Jasmine provided instantly, page and paragraph noted. The courtroom, once charged with tension, now held a different kind of stillness. The kind that settles in when something dishonest begins to collapse. This wasn't just a defense, it was a restoration of the rules Monroe had tried to ignore. And for the first time that day, the bench no longer felt like a weapon. It felt like a table, where facts were finally allowed to speak. Officer Nathan Ellis was called to the stand. He was the one who had issued the original citation that led to the $15,000 fine. Jasmine approached the moment carefully, knowing the strength of her case didn't lie in confrontation but in exposure. She asked simple questions. Direct, measured. "Do you have any photographic evidence?" He paused, then answered no. "Any written report filed that day?" Again no. "Any witnesses other than yourself?" Silence. Then, "No, ma'am." Each answer chipped away at the structure Monroe had tried to build. The entire case rested not on facts, but on Ellis's personal assessment. Unverified, undocumented, and unsupported. Jasmine didn't gloat. She didn't need to. The truth had taken shape on its own, piece by piece. Whitaker looked over at Monroe, but said nothing. He didn't have to. In that moment, it was clear to everyone that this wasn't about a violation. It was about authority being used without accountability. And when accountability finally entered the room, it didn't come with noise. It came with evidence, or in this case, the lack of it. The room didn't erupt when it ended. There was no applause, no dramatic exit, just a long pause as Judge Whitaker looked across the bench, then turned to Jasmine and gave a small nod. Not as a favor, but as a recognition. Monroe didn't speak, he didn't object. The fine was quietly withdrawn, the hearing adjourned. Ellis stepped down without a word. Jasmine gathered her notes, slow and steady, then walked out through the same doors she had entered. But nothing about the room was the same. She hadn't raised her voice. She hadn't demanded special treatment. She had simply required the system to live up to its own rules and refused to let it look away. For everyone who had ever been silenced by power dressed as procedure, this moment mattered. Not because she won, but because the game itself had been exposed. If you've ever been judged by your presence before your words, remember this: the truth doesn't need to shout. It just needs the right moment to be heard. Type if you've ever felt powerless in the face of authority. Type 2 if you still believe that integrity can turn the tide.